Hello and welcome to Live Healthy, Live Well, West Virginia. I'm your host, Dr. Lisa Costello, a pediatric hospitalist and assistant professor of pediatrics at the West Virginia University School of Medicine. My guest today is Bria McCown. Bria is a certified ISR instructor and owner of West Virginia ISR. She is joining us today to discuss water safety. Welcome to the show, Bria.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm so grateful for you to be on here as we're going to talk about a really important topic and an important topic to me. And as a pediatrician, the viewers know that I frequently talk about child health and also the experience of having a toddler myself. And
Sure.
This is an issue that really hits home for me in both of those areas. And we're going to talk about water safety because drowning is a leading cause of death in childhood. According
Yes.
to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, drowning is the #1 cause of accidental death for infants and young children between the ages of 1 and 4. Drowning risks and prevention measures change as the children grow. And at all ages, multiple layers of prevention are needed. And so I'm so grateful for you to join us today to talk about water safety. And just so that the viewers know, Bria is actually my daughter's swim instructor. So this is really close to me. And in talking with Bria, I thought the information she has would really benefit our viewers as we talk about water safety for all ages. So Bria, tell us a little bit about what ISR is, or infant swimming resource.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. This is a very important subject to me. It's close to my heart. So Infant Swimming Resource, it stands for, ISR stands for Infant Swimming Resource, and we are the global leader in the industry that we pioneered nearly 60 years ago, survival swim lessons. So we provide the safest and most effective swim lessons there are available today. And our mission of not one more child drowns is the foundation of everything that we do at ISR, and it's really the driving force behind ISR instructors. We believe first we need to skill the child in order to defeat that statistic that we just talked about. So, accidental drownings happen every day, and it's just not talked about. So all that needs to change.
Yeah, and I think that's so important because, when we watch TV sometimes and people who are in water and they may be struggling, it's sometimes depicted as something that like a lot of people are drawing attention to. However, unfortunately, and I've seen this in my own career as a pediatrician and also as a community member, is that a lot of times it's silent. A child goes underwater, they're not able to come up to the surface, and then someone may not recognize that. And that's why I'm so grateful for you to be on, because over the next time we have together, we'll talk a little bit about the importance of water safety and what we all can do to try to help achieve that mission that not one more child drowns and dies. So tell us a little bit about what you do as an instructor, and that you yourself and those who also kind of give water safety instruction have gone through a great deal of training to be able to teach others the skills they need to be safer in water.
Absolutely. So when I started, I was actually looking for something for my own kids and found that there was very little in the state of West Virginia, really nothing, besides a typical mommy and me class. So I just started to do my research, learned about ISR. So what I did, I applied, became an instructor, went to Florida for a couple months, and we had extensive training there, in water half the day and then academics in the afternoon. So what we actually do is we train children as early as 6 months old. Basically, when they're sitting up on their own and they're starting to move, that's when you want to start thinking about water safety. So we teach infants as young as 6 months to roll back and float, and rest and breathe until, help is able to get to them. And then the older kids, about 1.5, 18 months and older, we teach them to the foundation of self-rescue as well. But then we also teach a swim, float, swim sequence, which makes them very, very confident and competent swimmers at a really young age.
Yeah, and I've seen this firsthand in my daughter, and my husband and I chose to get swim lessons. As a pediatrician, I know how important it is. And really, when you talk about water safety, you want to have kind of multiple levels of prevention that we'll kind of talk a little bit more about. But just to kind of, we already shared one statistic. I mean, why is it so important that people even think about water safety? I think a lot of times people go to the pool or to a lake to obviously have fun, and
Sure.
we want them to have fun, but why is it so important to really have water safety on our minds if we have little ones around?
I think the better question is, why is it not, at the forefront of our minds of, why are we not thinking about water safety first? If you think about it, and we've all done it, I did it with my own kids before I actually, learned through ISR. But we all put our kids in the bathtub, put them in the pool, and you show them that it's fun before we ever show them that it's not, that it can be extremely dangerous, and that it's not just for play. So I think that's more of the question of why water safety is so important, because we're talking about their safety and we're talking about their lives. It's the most vulnerable and most dangerous position that you can put your child in. And like I said, we've all done it. If you haven't, kudos to you. But I know I did it with my kids before I really thought hard about, we need to teach them that water is very dangerous, the most dangerous situation we can put our kids in, before we ever teach them that it's fun.
Right, and I think that's probably an area, even as pediatricians, sometimes we might ask the question about water safety more around in Appalachia the summer months, because that's when people may be outside. I take my daughter to an indoor pool to get her swim lessons. We've seen more indoor pools, whether it be at a hotel or, someone for recreation. And then obviously you talked about just the water we have in our own homes, whether that's a bathtub or a toilet bowl has enough water to drown. I scarily have heard of stories of colleagues who have had children drown in a pothole. They were outside playing after a rain, and a deep pothole, which for people who live in Appalachia, we have a lot of those, and
Absolutely.
it can fill with water. And so that's why water safety is really important. I mean, and I think you just highlighted that really well, that we really need to be thinking about water safety all the time and really be preparing children and adults for what to do when they're around water. So how can someone make this be a priority, kind of every day, whether they're at home or in a place that there might be a larger body of water?
Of course, just like we talked about, thinking about water safety, what your water safety plan is, what your surroundings are. We really just need to take all of that into account. We need to have multiple layers of defense. First being supervision. There's no amount of skill that a child can have that is going to be better than, exceptional adult supervision. And we all, again, there's lapse in supervision every day at all times. It takes 30 seconds for your child to get out of your sight, whether that is in the bathtub, in the toilet, like you said, buckets of water, baby pools with, a few inches of water. It only takes an inch for a child to drown in water. So we really just need to be thinking of all those things. Like I said, the first thing is supervision. Second thing would be quality swim lessons. And as children and infants go, that would be self-rescue swim lessons. And there's a big difference in just swim lessons and survival swim lessons. So those things are the top two things that we need to start thinking about first. And then, of course, fences and door alarms, things like that, that also are barriers of protection.
And I think that's such an important part, that really you want to have layers of protection. And the American Academy of Pediatrics and other child health advocacy groups, they have different resources available. And I think it's really important about that supervision piece, and that really you need to be rotating if you know that you're going to be in a situation, like say you go to the pool, making sure that people take turns in making sure that they're the designated supervisor, and having it very clear like who the supervisor is, so that there's supervision in addition to what skills a child may have. Because
Yeah.
I've learned this firsthand. I mean, it's tiring for a little one when they're in the pool, even if they're having a good time. I mean, it can be pretty tiring. Would you agree?
Yes, and the other thing, I think we've spoke about this too, it's not necessarily the confidence that you have in your own kid, but when there's other kids in the pool and them wrestling and playing, you see it every day. Kids push kids under the water. They don't really understand the dangers of that, and they get excited. And there's a lot more than just like, oh well, my kid can swim. And I love that you brought up the point of having a designated person watching children. I think that's so important. We call them water watchers. That they put their phone down. They have nothing but eyes on the pool for their kids, and the kids in there, and switch out every 15 minutes so that you don't get distracted, and so you don't get bored, because it's very easy to turn your head and then you get distracted, and then here we are.
Yeah, and one of the things that I just actually saw on your Facebook page was that, like, depending upon what a child might have on, it might be difficult to see them like underwater. And so, even planning, before you take a trip, who are you going to be with, and you don't know what other people may be wearing, and so it might be even, it can be a challenging task.
Yeah.
So it's really important to kind of plan your water event, because there can be a lot of fun. Like, kids have a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun in bodies of water. And just like anything we do, whether it's a sporting event or going out for, to play in the park, you want to have safety in mind. And that is really important when it comes to water.
Yeah. Another thing, and you think of this, when there's a lot of people at a pool, there's a lot of distractions and a lot of adults talking and the kids playing. And, you think there's so many people here, nothing will happen. Everybody's watching the pool. But really, in reality, when everybody is watching the pool, nobody is watching the pool. So you really need to be cautious and careful of, like we talked about, having a designated person watching the water.
Yeah, and even if there is a lifeguard present, when you have small children, or really even up to teenage, if you have any child, you want to still have a water watcher, because the lifeguard is certainly working to look at the entire pool. And I know, just a personal story, when I was little, I was at the pool with my grandfather, and I started having some trouble underwater, and it was eventually the lifeguard came, but it wasn't initially. And so, if you have a water watcher, they can then direct to the lifeguard, hey, this person's struggling, they need help. And I think that, in addition to the lifeguards, it goes back to that layers of protection. And you probably have many stories that you could share, but I think it's important to, again, have as many layers of protection you can, so that it's a safe environment for your child or teen to participate in.
Yes, for sure. We don't have time for all the stories I could tell you. And, it's because it is a lapse in supervision. If there's an accident with a child in a swimming environment, it's just not talked about, because, as a parent, you have that guilt, and you don't, want to talk about those things that you could have prevented. So there's so many stories that you would have no idea that kids have ever had accidents.
Yeah, and let's kind of talk now and shift a little bit about what you were saying in addition to the supervision, is to get swim lessons. And there's a lot of variety in regards to what those lessons may be. And I think you shared that's why you went and got training for yourself, so that you could then help other families. But talk to us about, that importance of swim lessons, and how someone could find them for their child or teen?
Sure. So for ISR, you can go to infantswim.com and you can locate an instructor nearest you. Um, Unfortunately, there's not a lot in West Virginia. We would love to have one in the Charleston, Huntington, Parkersburg areas. We just have not been successful in finding any that will make that commitment to get trained and take that leap. But they're needed everywhere. But also, if ISR is not an option for you, reach out to your local aquatic center, YMCA. You can ask on Facebook to see if there's swim instructors that are reputable and that have that you can get some good referrals from. It really doesn't take much; you just have to ask.
Yeah, and I think seeking that information out, and uh, it's different from where you live. Obviously, you could travel to try to get those lessons, albeit a big commitment. And it takes time to kind of develop these skills. So I think sometimes people, in our climate area tend to associate the water more with the summer. We've already talked about how really you should be thinking about water safety in your own home and around the year. But it can take time to kind of develop these skills. So you want to be planning in advance because on average, what would you say? It takes a bit of a time for people to kind of develop these skills because it's developed based upon that each and individual person.
Sure, yeah. Generally, with infants under the age of 1, it can take 4 to 6 weeks to train them to self-rescue. And then kids older than that sometimes take about 5 to 7 weeks. You have a lot more attitude to deal with and personalities and all those things. So it might take a little bit longer for the older kids, but they also are learning more too. So yeah, it is a commitment, but of course, when it comes to safety, I feel like it wouldn't matter how long it took, I'd do it.
Right, and I think that that's such an important part that you mentioned because we really want to try to prevent these events from happening. And as the CDC's data show, unfortunately, this is the leading cause of accidental death in children ages 1 through 4. And once it happens, it's really hard to turn back. Unfortunately, children die or can have really lifelong impact from that submersion injury or from that drowning. So the prevention is so important. So it goes back to like what you said, have that safety plan, whether you're in a body of water or you're just thinking about if you have a young one, it's really important. So
Yes.
now I kind of want to talk a little bit about, we want to prevent drowning, of course, and prevention is key. But what happens in that situation, or could you give our viewers some tips of what they should do if, there was a child or teen that may be struggling or drowning?
Sure. Of course, in the event of something like that happening, you always want to check the scene for safety. If there's somebody with you, have them call 911 for help. And first and foremost, if you are a capable swimmer, you want to go in and help. If you are not, we don't want 2 accidents in one. You don't want to put the child that is struggling in danger along with yourself. But if there is something going on and you know that you're capable and confident of helping the child, then of course jump in after them, get them out, perform CPR immediately if needed. And I think CPR is such an important thing for all of us to be prepared for, not in just the event of a drowning, but I think we should all be keeping up on those skills in the event of any kind of emergency. So effective CPR is incredibly important. Yeah, I think that,
Yeah, I think
other,
those are the big tips, and I think we've seen a lot more of the public be mindful of like getting CPR lessons, but you can find those again searching. If you put in a simple search of like CPR lessons near me,
yeah.
you can really find those. Have you had success in directing people to those lessons?
Yeah, I have. Any kind of real CPR certification you can do online these days. So it's not hard. Again, it's just something that we have to seek out.
Right, and I think that that's so important. Again, it's part of your plan, and you should, be mindful because, again, not all bodies of water have a supervisor who's trained like a lifeguard. And then at home, I've seen it just in the growth of my daughter in regards to bath time as she's gotten older and how much, it is. She likes to have fun and she very much
Yeah.
enjoys bath time. However, it's also, definitely, I've noticed where I'm like, man, there's a lot of water in here. And if, something would happen, it would certainly, as you said before, it only takes an inch of water. And I think it's sometimes hard for people to wrap their mind around that. But, 1 inch of water is not that much. And that's all it really takes for someone to drown, unfortunately.
Yes.
So, where can people learn more about this? I think you just brought up a great point that I don't necessarily think all of us may realize is that a lot of these resources like CPR training, I mean, that's something you could do online yourself. Where can people get information about water safety or learn more about what they need to do to be safe around water?
Um, infantswim.com is a great resource for a lot of water safety tips. Redcross.org. There's a website called Kids Swim, or no, I'm sorry, safekids.org. That's another good resource with a lot of water safety tips. Getting information from aquatic centers and YMCA's near, or qualified swim instructors as well.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And we're showing some of the resources now. And really, depending upon like the body of water you're around, it's important to be mindful of that in addition to obviously at home. And there are a lot of resources out there. And so, again, doing some of that planning, making sure that you have a safety plan when it comes to water. You can always talk to your healthcare provider about places that they may find. There's some resources if there's some individuals in the area which you live, and maybe after watching this you yourself will have an interest in maybe taking the training that Bria, it's a commitment, but it really does save lives. And I'm personally grateful because my own daughter is going through this program to help her learn the skills needed. Obviously, we will provide the layers of protection, but that's an important part is trying to make sure that the child themselves have the skills that's needed. So what's kind of, if you would say, what's one piece of advice that you would give to parents or caregivers out there, because we have a lot of grandparents who care for children in our state and in Appalachia. But what is, the one best piece of advice about water safety that you could give to our viewers?
We've said it multiple times throughout this conversation, but just make it a priority because you can't avoid water. So just really making swim lessons an important part of your water safety plan, as we've said, is so, so important to keep your kids safe because I really, truly believe deep in my heart, you can't avoid situations like this. So you want to, prepare your child before, an accident could happen. I'm not saying that it will, but it does. It happens, and it happens to the best of parents. So it's just very important to have a plan in place and to really make water safety a priority.
Yeah, and I think what you just said kind of brought something to my mind. I have unfortunately had to care for some families who have had varying levels of experiences in water, some in which they were able to help their child and, they brought their child into the hospital to be checked out, all the way to the spectrum of, unfortunately, families who have lost a child due to a drowning event. And a lot of times it happens where you wouldn't expect. People were on vacation or were in a different location. So I think it's really important as well, if you're going even to a friend's house where kids are going to be playing, they may have a pool and you might not have a pool at your own house. And
Yes.
it's really important to kind of do the landscape and see like you mentioned before, is there an alarm on the pool? How secure is the pool? Because unfortunately, I've heard of many stories of sometimes when these events happen, they're at a place that the child is exploring and they're not used to, and then they unfortunately have an event, where they drown, and it may be too late by the time you find them. So
Yeah,
have you
and
experienced that? Mm-hmm.
I like that you brought up that point because I think the statistic out there, and I need to look this up, but I think it's like almost 70% of drownings happen at non-swim times. So, like you said, whether it's at a friend's house or a birthday party that they're not even swimming, or they've gotten out and they've gotten dressed, and then it happens, they get back in the water or whatnot. A lot of drownings. I know it's over 60%. I want to say it's close to 70% of fatal drownings or accidents happen at non-swim time. So you always have to be thinking of those things in anywhere that you're going, or if you do have a babysitter or friends' homes that have pools that you're not used to, you really want to keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I think that's such a great tip as well. And I do think it's definitely more than half of unfortunately the drowning events that do happen are at a not during those non-swim times. So
Yeah.
again, it's something as a parent or a caregiver to make sure you're having that plan. Well, Bria, I want to thank you so much for being on. Thank you for all that you do. Again, I'm a mother and a family who's personally benefiting from your commitment to learn these skills, and I've seen it firsthand in just the growth of my daughter. And it is somewhat of a reassuring feeling when your child is in that water and then they can like turn themselves over and they start to display the skills that you're teaching them. It does give that added layer of, I'm going to be there for my child and supervise them, but in the case that something happens, there's skills that they have to help themselves in that situation.
Yes, and I applaud you. And it is a commitment to make time for lessons, but you've made it a priority, and I'm so grateful for you. And you keeping your daughter safe and coming to see me and asking me to be on. So this has been a really big privilege.
Well, thank you again for joining us and for all of your ongoing work to help people lead healthy lives and be safe in and around water. And thank you all for tuning in to Live Healthy, Live Well West Virginia on the Library Television Network.